we will, and if more people join us, we'll just let them introduce themselves as they come in. Plans can change, so.
Plans can change. Yes, that's the new motto, I think, for 2020.
Indeed.
So, okay, and I see down here, thank you. I've got the share screen icon down there, which I will choose in a moment. So, okay. So lovely to meet you all in these very strange circumstances in all our homes. And I notice a few of us have got books behind us. And what I love about all the TV interviews that are going on now is we're nosing into people's homes and studies. And the amount of people who have lovely books, you know, in their studies, and I'm kind of looking, oh, I wonder what they've got on there. So that's one benefit is for nosy people who want to see each other's homes. So, okay, so I'm Sharon Jackson, currently in the UK, where I have a home, and I have a home. I'm very lucky to have a home in Crete, in southern Greece. And in fact, Crete, if any of you know the island, is located between Africa, the Middle East, and Europe, which is why I chose Crete to build the European Sustainability Academy. Quite a lot of my work is done in all those different parts of the world, and I'm a very lucky person normally to move around and see those beautiful places. So let me show you a picture of, if I hope I can do this. Okay, so host is disabled screen sharing.
Oh.
So if you want to just show the first one, that's fine. Just show the first picture.
I will do that. I didn't actually.
Okay, so I just want to show you what I mean when I talk about ESA, the European Sustainability Academy. And then I'm going to start off by telling you why I built this place, my little story of how I got to where I am and why I built this place. And then really bring us up to date to where we are now and what we've just been talking about. So as I mentioned, I chose Crete because it's such a perfect location to bring people within 3 or 4 hours travel, basically, to this beautiful Minoan island. And that was part of my decision about reducing my impact on climate change, reducing my travel, etc. Are we able to do that, Tina?
I'm getting there. I'm loading PowerPoint.
Okay. I only have 3 slides.
Yep, now I've got it. And I will share.
First one is just easy.
There we go.
So the first thing to say is before I start talking about East, there we go. There we go. Right. So this is what I built, the Academy, and it's just completely off grid. It's only powered by the Cretan sunshine. And can you see on the right hand side, that's our big dining room there, the photovoltaics on the top. And then you see we have 2 other roofs, which are green roofs. It's built of earth, straw, wood, and the local stone. And we're near Chania in Crete. But I'm on a mountain. I'm on about 300 meters, so about 1,000 feet above sea level, in a really, really small, very poor subsistence farming type community. And I wanted to build a place where people from business, which is where I teach within business, could come and really feel what being immersed in sustainability feels like, and then that feeling to change perhaps the way they think about their actions towards all aspects of sustainability. And in particular in Crete, we can see very clearly the impacts of climate change. And like elsewhere in the world, it is the poorest people that suffer from climate change. So this is my place, and I hope you like it. Does it look nice? Thumbs up? You like the look of it?
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll have a summer school in Crete sometime, eh?
Yes.
So it's very beautiful, and there's no air conditioning. So because of the way it's been built, a bioclimatic building, so the air comes through the building. Even when it's 40 degrees outside in summer, it's cool inside. There's no air conditioning, and in the winter, we use our own olive tree wood to make a fire, which then heats the water for the radiators. And because of the thickness of the natural walls and the materials, it's warm and snug. So it's a perfect example of a truly sustainable building. So Tina, if you want to take that one down, I can just move on a little bit, or you can leave that up, I don't mind. So that's for a bit later. We'll pop that one. That's for the very end.
Sorry, you said 3 slides.
Yeah, but yeah, okay. Can we just take down the screen sharing?
Oh, of course, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
now I
understand.
Okay.
Unless you want to look at that, or you can look at me. I don't really mind. So just to tell you how I got to there. Because just to say that is a private investment. That's the investment of everything my husband and I earned in like 30 years of our career. This is not a government funded project. It's all our own money. Literally everything we had went into this building at a time when Greece was enduring the worst economic crisis imaginable. So we engaged people from the village to help us build that place. We taught them sustainable building skills and a number of other things. And these days we employ the local villagers, the taverners, to serve our, do our hospitality, to do our catering, maintain the building. So even though I can't be there are people caring for that building for me while I'm not there, which is wonderful. So it's not just about the climate change, the environment, it's about that sustaining that community, that mountain community as well. But how I got there is via another route. So when I was around your age, I didn't know what my career was going to look like, frankly, but I thought I could be a good artist. So I did a first degree in illustration, but actually I wasn't very good, to be honest with you, which is a bit of a shock when you think you have your career planned out and then you realize you're not actually as good as you thought you were. So I had some fun with that for a little while. And then I found myself somewhere I never, ever expected to be, which was in the electronics industry. At 28 years old, I was a sales and marketing director of a £73 million company. And honestly, to this day, I've got no idea how I got there, really. It was because people believed in me and they saw something in me that they thought was good. So, but I never intended to get there. But once I did get into that role, I really enjoyed it. And I realized I was good. I was really good at my job. And I helped that organization. And I went on to other global electronic component manufacturing companies. And I was in that industry, that sector, for 15 years. Until 2000. I had an epiphany. I had a shock, really, when I suddenly realized what damage we do to the earth to make sure we have all these kind of things around us. And it was something that I hadn't noticed, or if I had noticed this, I hadn't really paid attention to this reality. And when I realized what was happening with issues we now call conflict minerals, and this was 20 years ago, this was 2000. Have you all heard of conflict minerals? So we're talking about gold, coltan. You might have heard of conflict diamonds, and some of the accords to make sure that diamonds are mined in a sustainable way. Well, all the minerals that go into phones and all sorts of other gadgets that we all use come from some of the poorest, non-stable parts of the world. So what happened to me in 2000 was I realized the company I was a director of, the company I was flying around the world representing, was actually paying for some people to be killed so we can keep the production lines running for the telephone companies. Now, I don't know about you, but when you know something like that's happening, you have some choices. And to me, it was not about a choice. I felt so disconnected. My own values about what's right in the world was so disconnected from that reality. I had to leave. I could not stay a day longer in that career. And of course, what I realized, it wasn't just that company, it was all of them. Now, 20 years on, a lot has changed in that sector, but there are still a lot of problems. And if you want to ask me about that afterwards, at the end, I'm happy to talk about that. But I just want to explain how I shifted from the electronics industry into teaching executives in the wilderness. So I left that sector after 15 years thinking, okay, not a very good artist, clearly not up to it in the electronics industry. I will retrain as an adult educator in responsible business. And nowadays we hear about CSR, responsible business, climate change, sustainability. It's all in the news at some degree. In 2000, it wasn't. It wasn't. And when I spoke up about the problems I saw in 2000, I was told to shut up. I was told nobody would believe me. I was told it wasn't the right thing to talk about. just get on and keep the production lines going. That was the reality 20 years ago. And it is different now. And you're lucky that you have a different platform now. And there are different voices and different ears out there. So I retrained and got a higher education certificate, and then started to work back inside organizations to try and change the way that policies and intentions were in organizations, to try and encourage different kinds of action, more responsible action. Because I didn't think it was right that someone like me has to leave my career. I didn't feel that's the right thing. So I wanted to really stop good people feeling they had no choice but to leave. And my focus from that point was always about, what is this disconnect? Those people knew that what they were doing, surely they can't think that was right to do. So what's the disconnect that happens when we see something bad happening, but we don't take any action? And I've forever been curious about that. So I started taking business executives into the wilderness. I took them into Tasmania. We did a lot of work in Shanghai and in the European Alps. So taking the executives I'd worked with, people like me, out of the business, away from the production lines, into the wilderness, to get them to feel what sustainability is all about. Discuss climate change, look at climate change, look at flooding, look at old past climate change problems. So, for example, look at glaciers across Tasmania, how they had crafted the land, etc. And I found that this worked. I found this reconnected people with something they thought wasn't kind of okay. And then we started looking at how to change intentions, good intentions, policy into actions. And that is how I started my move towards building ESA. But even then, I mentioned I was in China, I was in Tasmania, I was still flying all over the place. I was talking about sustainability and flying around the world. I was teaching in Melbourne in casinos. They invited me to do big public speaking in a casino, I remember once, with 30 swimming pools. Not a good connection, isn't it? It's something completely disconnected there. And once again, I took myself back to feeling, this is not working. This is not working. I'm a fake, because this does not fit with my values. So I had another decision point. And actually what I felt was I didn't know enough about climate change. Now, at this point, I was doing a lot of work in Australia. This is 2002, around that time. And the drought in Australia was so bad that many of the farms in the Central Australia desert were closing, they were barren, there was marriage breakups, there was depression. And I was doing consulting work with a group called Mission Australia, who were caring for the least advantaged across Australia. And we saw those farmers ending up on the streets of Melbourne and Sydney as alcoholics, as broken homeless people, because of climate change. They become broken because of climate change. The banks took their houses away back then. That has changed now. Things have changed now. And that is the connection with the climate change and poverty, or one of them at least. And I felt that I didn't understand climate change enough. I couldn't respond to the people who were telling me I was wrong and I was just making a fuss and it's all going to be okay and it's just a blip. So I went to the Arctic Circle in 2007. I went to Manitoba and I spent 14 days at the Northern Studies Centre there with the professors from Alberta University. And we looked at the impacts of climate change around the Hudson Bay. The polar bears, of course, but the people, the indigenous people. And in 2007 was the first time I really got it. I really understood how important, how serious the problems were, to see the permafrost melting, to see the Cree and the other Inuit people turning to alcoholism in the same way as I'd seen in Australia with the indigenous people there and the farmers across that continent. And if you may, Tina, would you mind putting up the second slide?
Of course.
Another big impact for me was this slide. So we were in the Arctic Circle in 2007, and we were looking at the impact of climate change in the Arctic Circle. And we were taking tree cores from the trees to look at how climate change was impacting on the trees up there. And what we saw, which in a minute we'll see.
Sorry, having a little trouble.
Okay. Yeah, that one, that's great. So you can see we're taking the cores out there on the left, and you can see my very nicely lined up tree cores from the laboratory, which I loved doing this, to putting them down and then investigating them. Every one of those tree cores in Manitoba, Canada, at the top of the planet, every one of those tree cores showed the eruption of Mount Pinatubo in 1991 in Indonesia. Every tree at the top of the planet showed a volcano from the bottom of the planet. And this for me was wow, we are so interconnected that everything we do in Australia or Crete or each of the countries that you're speaking to me from now affects every single one of us. We're all responsible. And it was a huge, huge piece of learning for me. And this was the point where I vowed to change all my flying, change all my whole life impact on the planet, and to build a purpose-built training center where people could really feel what climate change is and really understand it. And I decided to build my own place where from the beginning it was integrally sustainable. I could say all the things I've been told to shut up about. I could reveal all the evidence. I could hold around the fire discussions, and people could really cry or laugh or share ideas about how to move forward. I wasn't restricted by all the other restrictions I'd had for the last 20 years. Thank you, Tina. That can come down. So that is why I built ESA. That's why I did it. And from now, since I built it, so I built it in 2011, opened in 2012. It's been hard, I will tell you, because Greece was in the most dreadful state and without any understanding about caring for their environment. When people don't have food on the table, when people think that their country's going bankrupt, which was a reality, they're not really thinking about the plastic in the ocean or the climate change. They have other baseline worries. But we invited them into ESA. We had lots of open days and parties for the locals, and they engaged and became part of my wonderful, loyal group of people. And now we have people from all around the world wanting this immersive experience in this tiny village on the top of the mountain. And then since 2012, climate change has reared its head very, very clearly across the island. Particularly last year, we had Storm Oceanus, which in my region took the road down. The road went into the sea. 7 bridges around Hanya region went down over a weekend. People's olive trees were knocked down. Livelihoods were destroyed. And again, the poorest people are the ones that suffer every single time. That was just last February. And now we have our situation with the virus, and all those people, their cafes are closed, their shops are closed. So they are going to really have some hardship problems. So I hope for a starter, that gives you a few kind of ideas of questions you might like to ask me. I just want to show maybe that final slide before we go on to a bit more of a chat, because the one thing I've said is that I've really focused on the disconnects. Why people notice something's happening, have intentions, but don't. Yes, that last one there is quite intriguing, I think. Because maybe there's something we can talk about. The thing about the coronavirus is it's happened really quickly to everybody. And within 3 months, it was an issue that started over in China, but we all know has come within 3 months to touch all of us. Whereas climate change, I mentioned I was in Australia in 2001, and the farmers were losing their businesses then. That's 20 years ago. Yet the rate of change, the impact of change in 20 years has been very, very slow and very little. And, I think this is an amazing comment about nothing happening until the pain of remaining the same outweighs the pain of change. And I think, unfortunately, it's scarily true. And I'm interested in how we capture what's going on now, the speed of attention, how we can capture that later in terms of the much longer and malevolent problem we've got going on around us. Because climate change is not in lockdown, is it? It's still going on, but we're not focusing on it at the moment. Thank you, Tina.
Could you just talk to us about that image and what we're seeing?
This one? Oh, what it is? Oh, it's actually a butterfly in a cocoon ready to come out.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a butterfly. And it will, so it's basically to stay there until it comes out. That's the image. But the sentence is about we stay where we are in our cocoon, and George Monbiot, I don't know if you're familiar with the writer George Monbiot. He's quite a prolific writer on the environment. He writes for the Guardian newspaper in the UK. I had something here I saw. He wrote that the problem is that we've had the illusion of security around climate change. It's been something that's over there for later. But of course it's not. It's here and it's now, and it's in Crete and it's now, and it's in your country, it's now. And he said, the trouble is the greatest blocker of change is thinking that everything's all right. And that's what that little image shows, I think. We stay on our cocoon, it's all going to be okay. Whereas what COVID-19 has done has knocked us all for six. And I think all of us feel we're probably not all right at the moment. It's very clear, and we've responded. Is that helpful?
Very, thank you. So students, it's your turn to ask some questions that are on your mind.
Yeah,
doing
anything.
pretty well in terms of microphone and stuff, but if you just kind of raise your hand or indicate when you've got a question, start us off, Julia.
So just something I wanted to point out, because I have an idea or a sentence I've been noticing throughout time, is that there is no local problem in a globalized world. And what you said when there's a volcano erupting on another side of the earth, and it appears on forests or trees on the Arctic Circle, this really shows that it doesn't matter if we're blaming, let's suppose, China for the pollution, or we need to work together to find ways to stop it, because it's not somebody's fault, because everybody is going to suffer the consequences,
Yes, well, I think that's right. And when I saw that research, I was part of that research up there myself in the Arctic Circle in 2007. I had already been very clear for 7-8 years about these issues, but to really see it, it was such a powerful kick for me that I also wasn't doing my bit. I was still flying everywhere. My air miles it was back in the days where we collected air miles and we showed off about how many air miles we had. It was like a badge of honor that we were flying everywhere. And that has changed now. But you're right. It's then realizing we are all responsible. Every single one of us, every single thing we do has an impact.
Who else has questions? Munib and then Jamie.
Yeah, this is more of I actually wrote this down while you were speaking. So obviously now, with the coronavirus, there has been a decrease in emissions. I just wrote down some facts here: some 20 to 30% reduction of nitrogen dioxide, and 15 to 20% reduction in CO2. So worldwide since the beginning of the year. So my question is how can we ensure that these positive impacts stay on after, let's say, if this whole issue of COVID-19 gets solved, how can we ensure that we stay on this positive track of decreasing emissions? Especially because we saw China, for example, a country that has the most production, stopped for 2 months, seeing a reduction in CO2 and nitrogen dioxide.
I know. I've been following it also, of course. And for me, it gives us great hope. COVID-19 will get resolved. It will get resolved. We can be sure of that. And I think until fairly recently, we've not been totally sure that we can deal with the problems of climate change. But these stats are giving us a window of insight that we can make very quick improvements. I saw the NOx numbers, fantastic reductions. The particle pollutions, fantastic. The fish and the animals must be looking around and going, oh my goodness, what's going on? We've got the place to ourselves. What's happening here? Wow. Rivers, Venice has got clear water, and fish have come back into the water in Venice. really quickly. So we have to see those positive, hopeful responses. Now, the question is how. That's for sure true. People are having a different sense of what catastrophe feels like and what panic feels like. There's a little bit of having to transfer that to the bigger problems, but also the hope. Fear alone doesn't do it. We just have to have that hope and those solutions. So things that will help us. Now the Paris Accord is not doing well, honestly. So we can try and link into the Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Agreements, but they aren't working enough yet. They're just not really getting traction. What will get traction is divestment of funding from fossil fuels and the other stuff, and get it towards the innovation, the clean tech, etc. Even in Venice, you know, the pollution of all the engines that are used there, just changing those to green energy, for example, would help to continue the cleanness. So what we have to do is get that momentum of change, especially from young brains like yours, to keep that moving after COVID-19. So the group of people that I work with, we're having like sustainable coffee mornings every Wednesday. And one of the big questions is when to move on this, when to write, when to move, or when to start getting this traction of, hey, look how things have improved through a difficult time. Don't we all want to keep it that way? It's too early now because no one's really listening because they're worried about other things. But it will be a point, there'll be a window when we all have to say, let's try and keep this going. So circular economy is another. Have you studied circular economy yet in your studies?
Have you all run across that phrase? We've had people that have been working on it, like with, you know, clothing recycling and.
Perfect. Clothing would be a perfect idea. So reducing the waste and the cost, and even in all the technology, you know, if we've got to get coltan and gold out of the ground, let's reuse what we've got in here. So circular economy puts value back into waste, basically. It's moving in some places, but blocked mostly because of investment. So I think things like circular economy are going to get a real boost after this. You will see investors start on a risk-based decision, putting money into these cleaner technology and cleaner processes.
Would you just say a little bit more again, Sharon, about the beginning of that you said about divestment and reinvestment? So divesting from fossil fuel, you think the divestment movement is where it's at?
So I do quite a bit of work with ESG reporting, environmental, social, and governance reporting. So most of the investment houses look at ESG reporting to decide how risky businesses are. They really aren't necessarily interested in climate change and the environment. You've got to understand their drivers are about risk. Will the money come back? So if you have pensions, you know, I have a pension, the money is invested in pension funds for me when I get older. And actually most people want as much money as they can when they're older. They don't then think about the environmental impact. I do, of course, but a lot of them don't. So this is what the ESG mechanism is. And actually the Sustainable Development Goals, a lot of the other UN activities really are guided by the ESG reporting. Most of it, I have to say, is not worth the paper it's written on, because people can choose which indicators they use. And actually the ESG reporting for the worst organizations of the world is often seen to be as the best. Now, I do some work with large investment banking groups in Europe, and they've realized that now is the time to really, really drill down on this reporting, because they are really afraid of the risks of fossil fuel industries and others. So they are now, they were, for a month ago, we were doing a whole program of training to really start to get the companies and the assessors to really understand the risk, climate change risk. So there's also rules on climate change disclosure as well now. It's really getting quite serious. Now, you won't see it out in the news yet. It's still not quite on the inside of the organizations. But for example, the European Investment Bank will not invest in any more fossil fuel projects. It's stated. The whole of the European Union said, they've all agreed, all countries, we will not invest anymore because of risk to their own economies, to their own health of their countries. That's a huge move. That's a huge move. And others are following too. So I think, Tina, it's actually, yes, it's starting to really move now. Based on risk. We've got to remember the drivers of change.
I have a question, like specifically on like industries. Like, what is the most difficult like part of business to implement like sustainability? Because like I see like industries, it's hard because of like economy, and they don't want like it's an expense more for them. But and like I specifically think about like bigger industries. But what do you think is like the most difficult part of like business?
They're all difficult. They're actually all difficult. And okay, fossil fuels is the most difficult because there is so much money tied up in it, so much money, and there's so much myth. So it's a bit like the tobacco industry, really trying to persuade us that, you know, smoking cigarettes makes you cool and makes you calm. That was a myth for a long, 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 long time. And people still do smoke in some countries, but it has changed. It's taken years to change. The fossil fuel industry have the myths that we still need to be digging stuff out of the ground as a transition period. There are papers galore showing that that's not true. If you're still investing in natural gas or coal, that money is not going to green energy. So actually that's a myth. And that's because so much money is tied up in it. But universities where I teach, Cranfield, all of their postgraduate programs, which were guided towards oil and gas executives, have been cancelled, and everything is towards green energy now. So that's a massive shift as well. So when you see all these shifts happening and then join them all up, you will get to the point where the fossil fuel industry will be easier to change. People will leave as well. All the good people are leaving. The good talent's leaving. Anyone that can see the future, there's a bit of horizon scanning, can see that's not an industry for a future, is it? So it's tough. But, you know, tourism. You know, Crete relies on tourism. You know, we're 800,000 people most of the year. We go to 3 million people on the Crete Island. Yeah, tourism is huge. Now we have to say to them, well, people flying to Crete's not great because of climate change. Oh, and by the way, they pollute the sea. Oh, and by the way, they trash all the nature reserves, and. It's very difficult to get the hospitality industry on an island, like a poor island like Crete, not totally poor, but not wealthy, to change and impact on what we call their cash cow, their money coming in regularly. So the tourism industry is trickier almost than the fossil fuels because it can look sustainable. Green tourism, green this, it has that false sense of security that Monbiot talks about. So we can be conned, if we can be fooled into going on a green holiday, thinking it's all okay, but it isn't necessarily. Because, for example, in Crete, when all the floods came last February, all the garbage up in the mountains came down the river with the floods, and most of it had come from hotels. So that's a tough one because we're challenging a needed economy. It's not always clear what's good and bad, so it's a tricky one.
Thank you.
What do you think, actually? What do you think are more tricky industries to change?
I think like especially like industries that like produce things and like need like fossil fuels, like factories and things that pollute more. I think that they will like, because I don't know specifically how it would implement or like change how they would be more sustainable, but I think that will like decrease their production and they will need to do it, even though they will have like a better future. I don't know, like
a lot of them are changing, but not reducing, but changing their processes. So there is some fantastic innovation happening, amazing innovation in the university labs, PhD students, master's students, amazing work coming out of young people, frankly. So work with polymers, plant-based products. I'm working with a group in Athens that are making straws out of seaweed to replace plastic straws out of seaweed. There's amazing work going on, but it needs investment, it needs supporting. So that is the next shift, needing the investment to make these new technology innovations get into large scale production. So the plastics industry are under enormous pressure. And in the EU, from next year in the EU, single-use plastics will be banned. So they are making massive changes, massive changes. You probably can't see them yet, but those things are going on.
Jamie, you had a question, and then maybe Barkov will have one for us. Go ahead,
I
Jamie.
was just hoping you could speak a little more on how you discovered kind of all the awful things that were happening at the company that you were working for. I mean, that really intrigued me. It's just, was that kind of an open secret, or were the really behind closed doors? How did that all work out, I
I was
guess?
wondering that too. Was it a conversation? Did you see a report?
It was a board meeting. It was a board meeting. So, and it happened in Las Vegas. Would you believe that? We had to go every year. We went to this massive electronics show in Las Vegas. We went every year, and there was this discussion about a payment. It was actually a lump of money that they were discussing. It's called facilitation payments, which is also another word for a bribe. Basically, you ever hear someone talk about facilitation payments? And it's still absolutely rife in extractive industries, etc. And it basically means facilitating our license to operate in a particular country. And this was a big amount of money, you know, which was going over to the Congo in a brown paper bag to pay militia. I can't call it anything. Just pay militia to make sure our source of coltan, tantalum is another word it's called, was free to come out to the US. It was coming to the US. And I had heard something about it, Jamie. I just hadn't paid attention to it. I'd heard this before. I'd heard about bribery. I knew we were bribing. That was kind of, you know, 20 years ago, it was happening all the time. This time it just struck me, and it made me feel physically ill. Physically ill. I just felt, I cried. I really cried. I just felt so sick that I was complicit to that, and I couldn't give my business card anymore to anybody. So I did try and discuss it with my senior colleagues and say, this is not a way forward. If our shareholders find out about this, we're all doomed. And I was told categorically, if I said anything at that time, I would be in big trouble. And I then discussed other issues that we were lying to our shareholders anyway, about our 20% year-on-year growth and all this stuff that we knew wasn't happening. And actually, Jamie, I think I had like the tail of a tiger, you know. The more I pulled, the more was coming out, and the more I found out about other things, which I have to say, I knew was going on, but didn't pay attention to. I really didn't. I'm very honest about this. So when you notice something so bad like that, you can't unnotice it. You can't. So I was told that I was just disempowered. I would have to fall on my sword, basically, and that's what I did. I said I would leave.
That's really interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bhargav, what's on your mind?
So I wanted to ask you about what do you think about like the electronics industry, especially when you look at like mobile phones, because there's just stuff just keeps on getting outdated like in months of time, and there's more production and there's a lot of e-waste generated because people tend to buy newer devices. And it's just that the trend doesn't look good because around like 10 years back, you wouldn't have something like a mobile phone get outdated so quickly, and people wouldn't like change as frequently as they do now.
Well, the first thing I would say about phones getting outdated, that's your choice if it's outdated or not. It's up to you whether you want to buy another phone. That becomes your responsible decision. Honestly, my husband made me get this. I had a really old-fashioned phone. I use a phone to make telephone calls with, and that's about it, pretty much. So we all have choice about the clothes that was mentioned earlier on. You have a choice of how many garments you buy a year and how much you pay for them. So that is your choice of whether you want to. You feel having the new phone makes you feel like a better person. that is for you. But there is something else that goes on, and it still goes on now, and it was definitely happening when I was in the industry, is built-in obsolescence. So there are things that will literally break down 1 month after the warranty. It's built to do that. It's built to do that. Now, what is happening is there are a lot of repair cafes popping up all around the world. I mean, India is the best place in the world for repairing and circular economy and actually, you know, making old things work again, which is a new growth. It's a growth of activity. So e-waste, yes, exporting harm has just been an extraordinary problem. And I did some work with RICO photocopiers for many years on this, on looking at reducing exporting harm. Now, actually, countries are sorting that out themselves by saying, you can take all your rubbish back. We don't want it anymore. And certainly in China, I've spent a lot of time in Guangzhou, and my husband's from Malaysia, actually, and there's a big scandal about the e-waste going to Malaysia. And those places are going, sorry, Great Britain, sorry, wherever, you can have it all back again now. Now, there is value in that e-waste. There is circular economy in that e-waste. But the way in which it's extracted is usually very, very dangerous for the people taking those products out, and very polluting for the rivers and the environment. So circular economy is a bit more of a formal way of getting all those precious metals out and then reusing them. That is an entrepreneurial industry. That's an industry. So there's an opportunity for young people to actually set up and make a business out of. But at the moment, it's on the fringes of like the rag picking and all that kind of stuff. It's on the fringes out there and not seen as a serious potential as a sustainable industry. Does that answer the question?
I had.
Buy a new phone every month or every 2 months?
No, I had something in mind. So I've noticed that there's a trend with the manufacturers strapping you to their ecosystem. For example, Apple does that to you by trapping you to their ecosystem. So if you, like, they even intentionally slowed down iPhones. There was a legal battle that was happening. So they basically force you to go ahead and change to the next version by slowing down your phone, by trapping you in this ecosystem, and you can't change to anything else.
So that's the same as built-in obsolescence. That's the same as built-in obsolescence. So, well, there needs to be, I don't use Apple products, but there needs to be some kind of response to that, some kind of reaction to that. How do you suggest you guys can impact on that?
I've heard that the new iPhones, or some iPhones, it's made reusing from older phones.
Okay.
So
We gift Gaffer doing that here in the UK. I've seen them on the TV about the same. And the repair shops are doing really well as well about that. So I think what's going to happen is that the trend would change. You know, I said that when I was a young executive, we would show off about how many air miles we had. That's seen as quite disgusting now. That would be like wearing fur coats or smoking, you know? Things have changed. Attitudes to what's cool and trendy is changing. And actually even the clothing. So having vintage now, this is not vintage, but it could be. Having vintage is cool and it's the thing to do. So I feel what's going to happen is having the older model or the upcycled is going to become the cooler thing. It'll take a bit more time.
Yeah, and like the thrifting, like there's been, like I've been studying on like fashion industry, and like something that's really like popping up now and like trending is like thrifting and like getting like used or like cheaper clothes, but like they were already used. So like they have a smaller like carbon footstep, I think so.
Carbon footprint, exactly. And if a celebrity picks up on anything like this, that's it. If you can find a celebrity to endorse, you know, upcycling and thrifting, that's when things start to shift forward.
Yeah.
We have time for maybe a couple more questions. I have a simple one. Do you speak Greek?
No, malista.
Ah, πολύ ωραία.
Λίγο. Ligo mono. Only a little bit.
When you set about to construct this this facility for ISA, it must have been a little. You must have had some challenges, or were there enough English speakers around to translate for you? Or
there were no English speakers. Drapanos is not an English-speaking village. We're talking about really rough and ready Cretans who will shoot you if they don't like you, frankly. I don't know any Cretan that doesn't have a gun in his car. My architects spoke English. They were both trained in Greenwich. That's pretty much it. I knew that I would have to get the village on my side early on if it was going to succeed. So what I did was, there was about 18 months between planning and all the bureaucracy, which you don't want to know about that. But it was about 18 months before we could actually break soil. So I went up to the taverna. We're talking about really, really small, tiny, full of men smoking a lot and drinking something called sukudia, which looks clear like water, and it's like rocket fuel. And so I actually get,
it's moonshine.
Yes, I suppose it is. So these are really, really like very, they're shepherds. All the people are shepherds and farmers. So I would go there on my own, because I was mostly there on my own during this process, with a mud brick, handmade earth brick, which is what we were making the building out of, the plans, and my laptop. And I would sit in the taverna, have a little bit to eat, and just sit there and make it known that anybody could ask me anything they want to ask me. I did it for 18 months. So, we between us, we will manage to communicate. Sometimes the old men of the village will come and take the brick away, take the plans away for several hours. Like, okay, I've lost that then. And then they'd come back and go, Indaxi, olakala. And then they'd leave me a half a litre of wine. And one day I had 6 half liters of wine in the fridge.
Okay, it's all good.
It's all good. And I said to that cafe owner, give that to someone because I won't be able to walk home. So I made myself very, very, very open. We did have some community centre days where we showed plans, and we did have interpreters, and we allowed people to challenge us and not be scared, basically. So I've always said, I want to build my place here to show how beautiful and sustainable this place is. I'm not here to change you or tell you to have your life, run your lives differently. So now, I sponsor the local litter picking group, and we buy them t-shirts, printed t-shirts. My academy is open as a cinema for the kids. If they want to come watch movies there, they can. They have parties there. As I said, all the tavernas supply all the food. I decided not to have a restaurant, a proper kitchen, because I didn't want to compete with any of the local businesses. So as soon as they saw I was no threat, they helped me. They helped me nonstop. It's been great.
That's awesome.
And actually, even the younger people, just thinking about some of the things we've talked about now, I can help the young entrepreneurs who are in their early 20s. The last 10 years of their life has been economic crisis. They really haven't known if they'll have a future. Will they ever be able to buy a house? Will they ever have any money? Will they have a job? 40% unemployment in Greece. So my academy has become a bit of a sanctuary for young people to share ideas about the mobile phone industry, about the clothing industry, share ideas that we've worked up into some kind of entrepreneurial opportunity for them. That's why I'm saying there are opportunities for young people. And one of the guys, Agiris, he noticed that the sponges of the seas that have been completely decimated, if you only cut a little bit of them, they grow back every month the same size. And those sponges are worth $60 to $80 on different markets. 23 years old, he's now teaching the old fishermen of Greece how to sustainably harvest sponges and how to package them as a luxurious product. We've helped them look at something very local, a climate change or sustainability challenge, and turn it into an entrepreneurial opportunity.
It's a lovely example. Thank you. Julia, did you have another question?
Yeah, what main your site says that you focus mainly on senior managers and directors. Why do you think that they are the most difficult to I don't know how to say, but why senior managers and directors are more difficult to talk into?
Well, I focused on that, Julia, because that's the world I know. It's you know, it's where I came from. I came from the board of directors of very large corporations, some very large corporations, and then I know that I can speak their language. They know I understand financing and budgeting and planning and selling overseas and setting up big contracts. I can talk about that, and they can trust me because they know I've got those qualifications, that experience. And I also thought that, and I still do to some degree, that it's the biggest companies that make the biggest negative impact and could make the best positive impact. So I have worked with oil and gas. I've worked with mining. I worked with BHP Mining Company for many years in China. And when if I look at those kind of companies, I could look, oh, evil, horrible companies. But the people inside are just like you guys. They're nice young engineers who want to aspire to a decent job and have a house, and they're nice people like you. They're not bad people. They're not evil. So I decided to work with the top level management to enable younger people to have good jobs and good opportunities. But actually, the young entrepreneurs have found me. You've talked about my focus, my expertise, but these youngsters are coming to my academy because in Greece, there hasn't been until now place for them to get entrepreneurial training, good business entrepreneurial training. Because in Greece, the notion of entrepreneurism didn't exist. It's not the culture in Greece. And in fact, when I first got there in 2009, I was told off. I was pretty much swearing if I used the word entrepreneur. Entrepreneur was a disgusting capitalist, gray-haired man with a moustache who didn't care about anybody. And I went, well, my entrepreneurs aren't like that. They are, helping with sustainability problems. So these people found me. These young guys and women before they graduated from technical university used to volunteer to help me with my conferences. They would come up to just hang with me and shadow me and see what I was doing. So one of those people, they've set up their own company called Enso, and they maintain photovoltaic systems. And they are my engineers now who maintain the system at ESA and keep us running with power. So they've gone from undergraduates shadowing me, and now they have a contract with me. So I'm shifting a little bit by the need. If people come to me and need help in this area, of course I'm gonna help them. And women as well is another area that's developed. Women needing more support in setting up businesses, particularly in Greece, and also I've done quite a bit of work with women in India as well, across India, setting up their own sustainable enterprise. That wasn't my focus. It's like me starting out as an artist, going through the electronics industry and ending up a teacher. I kind of have where I think I'm going to go, but demands and needs come in as well. So a bit of flexibility.
Thank you. I think that's a lovely place to stop for now. I think we all really appreciate your spending time with us and telling us your story. There's a lot of inspiration and a lot of food for thought as you all plan your Catalyst Conference projects. I hope you'll revisit this conversation and share tidbits with your classmates. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your questions. And if you want to ever reach out to me by email or by Facebook, if you have any questions or you want some good source of data, just write to me. I'll be happy to respond.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
Take care. Bye-bye, everybody.
Happy Saturday. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Thank you.